G-Clef here, and we're here in the studio with my guardian angel there. Usually I don't film at this angle, so we're kind of stuck with her up there. Sorry about that. I'm not even 10 seconds into this video and I already hate it. So today I'm going to address something that's brought up a lot, and that is how to write a song. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about what you should know to be able to write a song, and it isn't really that much. So generally speaking, you should have some kind of direction. You should have some kind of an idea about where you want to go and what you want your music to sound like. Because if you don't, you'll just come up with anything and it may not be what you want. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that our first version of our song is our last version of our song, but it's nice to have a little bit of a vision and not create things in a vacuum. So I'm going to show you a couple of the songs that I just wrote, and I'm going to talk to you about their influences, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty and teach you how to write a pop tune, and I'm going to do a little bit of narration with what I'm playing and writing and that sort of stuff. Okay, so that's what's on the plate today. You'll also incidentally see some mumbo jumbo that I'm going to put somewhere on the screen, hasn't been decided yet, because I am going to get into a wee bit of chord theory and just some other very basic music theory that you probably already know, even as someone who doesn't play music, but you just don't know what the nomenclature is. So recently I've been working on I guess you could call it a crossover jazz album. So crossover jazz basically links pop and jazz a lot more. Essentially, this version of jazz was made to get a broader audience, and that's why I'm using it. So I've recently done a cover of Marilyn Manson, for example, and incidentally, not all of his songs that he played are his, or that the band played is the band's. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to make, and it was fun because the entire Marilyn Manson project is about marrying opposites. And thus what I did was I took his music, or their music, or however you want to say it, and I just jazzified it. So I brought it back about, let's see, 40 or 50 years from when it was originally written. And that gave it a different sound, and I think it played into it. So I think the Beautiful People, I may have done it in D minor. So I used a very standard jazz trope there. So in terms of chords, that's minor 1, flat 7, I guess a sharp 6, and then a 5. Or no, I'm sorry, flat 6 and then a 5. So that chord progression is D minor, C, B flat, to A. So D minor is the minor 1, C is the flat 7. Now B flat is the flat 6, and then we have A, which is the 5. And there's numerous songs, especially classic jazz songs. There's one by Peggy Lee called Why Don't You Do Right, and that's the majority of the song. You had plenty money, 1922. You let other women make a fool of you. Why don't you do right like some other men do? Right. So the idea is that you can recycle these pieces and put them into your own music. Now, of course, someone is going to say, but Randy, you're stealing something. I'm actually not. The thing is every style of music really has its own chord progressions and its own way of doing things. That's what creates a musical style in the first place. So that's why I'm not stealing anything. I'm just reusing an idea and applying it again in a different way. Now, conversely, you can do things differently. You can oversimplify things. So one of the things I've been working on is a song, who did it? Oh, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Under the Bridge. So here's their version. So how did it go? Sometimes I feel like I don't have a partner. Sometimes I feel like my only friend. Right? Now that's, maybe it's a little slow because I tend to play songs a little slow. But that's a very poppy chord progression. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to make it more bluesy and more of the cool school of jazz. Now the cool school of jazz is about minimizing and making the groove almost more important than anything else. So when we listen to things like Miles Davis' So What? Now that goes on and on and on for, what, 16 bars, and then it modulates, does the exact same thing up a half step, and then goes back down. But what's cool is the way that that song utilizes space, and that's what I tried to do with this reharmonization that I did. So I'm playing it in F, and I figured why not just do 1 flat 7 to 5. Or, I'm sorry, to 4, my bad. So it's, sometimes I feel like I don't have a partner. Sometimes I feel like my only friend is the city hallelujah, the city of angels, behind the desire. So all I did was I minimized everything there. Now this is going to happen with your writing too. You may want to expand or you may want to minimize what you're writing. Now that we've done some of my compulsory playing for you, what I like to do is take a minute and we're going to talk about some basics. Alright, nothing fancy here. Some of you may have been confused when I started talking about numbers. 1, 2, flat 7, flat 6. Well really, these numbers are only a universal way to speak about music. So this way you don't have to think about a key, you don't have to know what a tonic is. A tonic being like in the key of G, G is the tonic. Anything that a key is named is its tonic. If it's A flat, it's A flat. If it's D, the tonic is D, and so on and so forth. Not rocket science, folks, right? But when you want to talk about things more universally and universal relationships within music, we like to use a number system. So, here we go. Here's our little quickie explanation. C major has tones C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C in it, right? So, that means that C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, and so on, until we get 8, right? So if we wanted to have a 2-5-1 chord progression, that chord progression would go D, G, C. We're not really talking about whether it's the minor 2 or the major 2. When we do write down this particular style of analytics in music, we use lowercase to mean minor and then uppercase to mean major. So right now what we're going to do is explore a little bit of something that I was doing during a music lesson. I was trying to teach a kid how to play a little bit more rock piano. And I just wanted to show him how to do just this little lick that I made up. I'm sure it's not really original to me. All I'm doing is playing C major, and then I'm playing C sus2, and then I'm playing it back to the 3. So it's something like, or just, right? So this is very, very basic basic thing. So I said, hey, you know what? Let's do this, because he got that really fast, obviously. I said, let's do this. Let's play C, A, F, G on the bottom, which is what I call the money chord progression. And the money chord progression, for the record, is 1, 6, 4, 5. There's tons of songs that evolve around that chord progression. So here's what he came up with. I think originally, so originally I gave him this right hand. And he just switched it around. Instead of starting on the sus2, it starts on the sus3. Or sus3. It starts on the third. Sorry. So he's doing 3, 2, 3, and I'm doing 2, 3, 2. So I think I'm going to do both of them for the sake of illustration. Now, to emphasize, my right hand isn't doing anything but doing... Okay, nothing fancy there. Same thing over and over again. But check it out. Listen to what happens when I play C, A, F, G, or 1, 6, 4, 5 in the bass along with it, with this little lick on top. Now that just took it to a whole nother level, and all I did was add bass notes. Then the other way to play that would be... Now the other thing I heard was some kind of a thing on E, like so that's C, there's A, and then something like this. You know, and then some break there. So that's a way that you can take a lick and cut it in half. Basically, all I did was I just added another chord, and then I ended on G, and wound up getting away from that same thing over and over again, right? So that's a very basic way to write a song, and I'm sure that any one of you watching this video could come up with a simple melody. Now it's time to talk about melodies. Generally speaking, melodies aren't that crazy, especially when we're talking about writing pop music. If I take this example, and maybe we'll just use this as our working example. Not in my key. So now at this point, because I always forget things, I'm just going to quickly jot down what I just did. I think I'm going to go ahead and change the key as well. Key changing is a big thing, because especially if you're going to be the singer, or if you're the guy who's doing the writing for a specific singer, you want to do something in their key. And C is not my key. G is generally my key. So let's see, how could we duplicate that in G? So I did something like that. So you're witnessing me writing a little bit of this song. Now, we have that one little part. And, you know, it works. It's basically a verse. So I'm going to quickly jot that down. Anyway, so this melody is not very sophisticated at all. It's just 2, 3, 4. All of 3 notes. Okay? So, you may or may not realize that you actually know the format of music. And usually laymen know the format of music because they know lyrics. So any song that you know generally will have at least a verse and at least a chorus, possibly a bridge. So everybody kind of gets into the same kind of writing groove. Typically speaking, bands will come up with the same type of sections over and over. With jazz especially, there's usually at least a B section, and usually the format is A, B, A. B or bridge is the same thing. So what we're going to do really quick is we're going to get back to some already written music, and we're going to describe what we call musical form. So this is an example that I use with all of my students, especially when they start playing this song, because it's a very simple song to play. So this song is Ode to Joy. Okay, now that was the 2 A sections. Now, you'll notice that there are slight differences in the melody, and this particular thing may or may not pertain to pop that often, only because it has a different ending. So this part we just call A, because it's the first thing that happens, so that's our A section. Now here's the next bit. That is the ending to the A section. You could, if you want, call that part A2. So you'd basically have that would be A1, and that would be A2. You could also consider it all just A. Don't really matter. Now, we all also know that the song has that part that goes. Right? So there's that part, and that is definitely a B, because it doesn't start just going up and then going back down. This song does both. Or rather, this part does both. So that makes it a completely separate section of music. So the melody there is what dictates the change to a bridge, and usually the chord progression will differ a little bit. Otherwise, in classical music, it's just called a variation. And a variation is when you just use one, what we call strophic form, or repeating form. So like row, row, row your boat is a strophic form. So you can take your strophic part and just add stuff onto it, or if you really wanted to, you can have just one single part, which obviously gets a little dull to the ear. So now you know a little bit more about formatting. So what I want to do is at least have a bridge here. Other formatting pieces involve choruses and pre-choruses, interludes, all sorts of stuff, introductions, the whole 9 yards. So the way that you're arranging your original song can be in a multitude of ways, and you don't have to sit down and figure this all out today, you know. You want everything to brew, and you want to let some time go by so you can get comfortable with your composition, and you can also get comfortable with the way it sounds. Remember, you're going to have to live with it this way your entire life, especially if you release it. Okay, so let's get back to our song. Now, we're going to talk about 1, 4, and 5, because I want to use those 3 chords in, let's say we're going to make a bridge and a chorus. So, there's something else that you know but don't realize you know it. There's this thing called a resolution. And a resolution in music is just when you get to the end of something. So here's a resolution. So feel how that last chord resolved, it made everything end? So there are ways to not resolve. Right, so that leaves a little bit more tension. So what I want to do for our B section is I want to create a little bit of tension. So I'm going to start on the C chord, which is the 4. And just to make life easier, I'm just going to predetermine that it's just going to go C, let's see. Kind of like that. So C, G, A minor, and then I did some weird walk-up thing. Oh, I played G over B. Like the last beat of something. Okay, so just to kind of listen to the whole thing right now, or at least what we have, we got so I didn't realize it, basically because I haven't timed this out at all. I didn't realize it, but I didn't have enough chords for that one part. So now my B section is going to be C, 2, 3, 4 to G, 2, 3, 4 to A. And then that A is going to be 3 beats, and then I got a beat of G over B, and then C. Now, as a side note, it's fun to use slash chords. Slash chords are a very, very, very basic thing. When you use your slash chords, it'll make your chord progressions sound a lot more interesting and a lot cooler. And for me, it's an actual writing style, so I use it as much as I can. So now we have to figure out a melody. And I notice I've actually cut this riff down. same way, it may morph into something else. So then after we have 2. Okay, now I'm just stumbling around and seeing what I can do for the next thing, for our chorus, I suppose. So I've kind of decided just now that I wanted to leave D in the base of everything. So basically just gonna vamp this like. Yeah, I guess gonna work. Maybe I can't do that, or at least it's not happening yet, right? So, I guess the other thing I can do is I could also just reuse my verse and just write a different melody over it, which is a common thing. Piano Man is a great example of that. I despise that song. Alright, so how are we going to... Okay, so this has already exceeded my range, but I'm thinking that basically a chorus part would have something like... go back into the, right? So this is the basics of writing a song. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to do it, and you don't really have to know a whole hell of a lot to get through this. So one thing I would suggest, and you have to remember that I've written like boatloads of music, couldn't even tell you how much music I've written, and arranged, and all that jazz. So I've already found a writing style for myself, and it just makes my life easier. But even if you don't have a writing style, sit around with your guitar, play some E, A, and B, and you'll be able to come up with something. Let's take that. Too high for me. Sorry. So. Whoops, I'm doing my slashes, but you guys get the idea. That's just a simple thing that you can start with, and then maybe start moving some of your bass notes around or change a chord here or there. But the first thing you ever want to do is just write something simple, you know. You may want to start with something like a predetermined form, like a blues form. There's this song that I wrote, it's just a simple jazz blues. See if I can remember it. I wrote this song when I was like 17. It's just like... that's it. It's all 12 bars of it. So don't sit down thinking you're going to write a sonata. Don't sit down thinking you're going to write an album. Sit down and let what comes out come out. And don't be afraid to walk away from what you're doing and come back at it with a fresh perspective. Hopefully this gave you guys some of the basics and got you into some of the lingo and all that good stuff. Take it easy, and I will catch you later.